Representative Selene Colburn, and I represent the part of Burlington that houses the University of Vermont and a lot of the surrounding neighborhoods. And I'm the clerk of the Climate Solutions Caucus in the legislature. So I'm going to build on Senator Perchlik's remarks and just tell you a little bit about our work and the platform we've developed heading into the coming legislation. But first of all, I just really want to offer my very heartfelt thanks to all of you for being here on a Saturday. It was really amazing to walk into this full room. How many of you serve on a town energy committee or staff at a town energy committee? Well, again, really thank you. I started my work in elected office in municipal government. I was a city councilor, and I just want to really recognize how important your mostly volunteer work is to both tackling the climate crisis, but also just the daily lives of people in your communities. So thank you, and thank you for being here on a Saturday to talk about these issues. So the Climate Caucus was founded in 2012 by Senator Chris Pearson and Representative Mary Hooper. And it has quickly become the largest issues-based caucus in the legislature. We have nearly 90 members now, which is when we get to 90 members, half the legislature will actually be a member of the Climate Solutions Caucus, which I am pretty certain will happen in the coming session. So that's really exciting. And we've seen just huge growth in the time that I've been in the legislature in the last three years in this caucus. And I think it's because legislators hear from their constituents that this is a really, really important issue. We saw like an influx of people wanting to join around the time of the climate strike this summer, for instance. So there are 86 of us now, I believe. We meet weekly in the legislature, and those are actually open meetings. Historically, we've met Thursday afternoons at noon. People can come and join us and hear what we're talking about. We do try increasingly to use that time to really roll up our sleeves and get work done. We used to kind of hear more presentations and information, but we're really ready to work in this caucus. But that said, you're very, very welcome to join us in those meetings at any point in time. So after the last legislative session, I think a lot of us felt we would have really liked to do more. And so we devised a process to get our caucus more organized, more focused, headed into the 2020 legislative session. So within a week or so of adjournment, we actually held a retreat for all of our members that was facilitated by Paul Costello. And we started to think about what our priorities were and what we wanted to organize around. And we formed work groups that worked diligently over the summer to come up with legislative proposals around those issues. So we had a group working on transportation, we had a group working on the green economy, and we had a group working on building efficiency. And then when the fall rolled around, we decided to take that platform. So we had like 70 pages of recommendations that then our Climate Caucus co-chairs distilled into a platform of 4 banner bills. And I'm going to talk to you about what those bills are in just a moment. But what we've been doing is all fall, we've been going community by community around the state and holding what we're calling road shows. There's one coming up in South Burlington on Monday night. Monday night.
Anybody's welcome.
Anybody's welcome. 6:30, right?
Yep.
And sharing this with Vermonters and evolving the platform in response to what we hear from you. So I'm gonna try to be pretty brief, zipping through it, and I hope that when we do have time for questions, you'll share not just any questions you have that Angie and I and Lauren as well, who's very well versed in this, can answer, but also feedback for us about what you think is missing, what you think is important, what you'd like to see. So that said, I'm going to move through these pretty quickly because I'm sure you saw this morning. We know this story, right? We are nowhere near meeting the statutory goals that we've set, nowhere near meeting our comprehensive energy plan goals, and nowhere near meeting the Paris climate accord goals that our governor recently committed us to. And we know that the biggest sources of our emission are transportation and heating here in Vermont, and that we need strategies to tackle those. And this is a slide, I'm sure you saw a version of this slide this morning. This is a slide that I think really resonates with us in the legislature as we try to build a resilient local economy. It just doesn't make sense to be sending so much of our dollars out of state to an industry that just isn't directly benefiting Vermonters. So we have a 2020 agenda that is based around what we're calling 4 banner bills. So we're looking at accountability. How do we get us back on track with actually meeting these goals that we've set? We're looking at cap and invest strategies in the transportation sector. We're looking at building efficiency, and we're looking at continuing the path to fully renewable electricity that Senator Perchlik talked about. We also have 2 groups that are continuing their work into the legislative session. So we have a group working on the issue of resiliency, and we have a group working on some underlying guiding principles that we can, who really care about this issue in the legislature, can use to assess all kinds of legislation for its climate impacts that comes through the building. And these are by no means the only bills or the only work that's happening to tackle the climate crisis in the legislature, but this is what our process evolved as, where we as a caucus are going to try to really focus some energy this coming year, because we think these are actionable and achievable. So some of you may have heard of the Global Warming Solutions Act. We have bills on this in the House and the Senate. I am one of the lead sponsors of the original House bill on this with Sarah Copeland-Hansis, who is a co-chair of the Climate Caucus. And what this bill does is it creates a system in government by which we actually have to be accountable for our goals. So it charges, the original bill charges the Agency of Natural Resources, but we're looking at a kind of a 2.0 version of this bill that would actually create a climate council made up of stakeholders in state government, but also of people like you that will be charged with developing and updating and maintaining a plan that will actually help the state reach these goals. So we've had these lofty goals in statute since I think 2006. How do we actually get there? And then we also have in this bill a private right of action. So if the state does not create this plan, does not enact the plan, and does not meet our goals, you as Vermonters can bring the state to court and get injunctive relief. So you can basically get a court order that will direct us to get back on track. And this is based on legislation in Massachusetts some time ago that actually, you know, we're still trying to understand the correlation and causation here, but Massachusetts has seen a reduction in emissions since really being taken to court over their Global Warming Solutions Act, and they have lower emissions per capita than we do in Vermont. So it's not just that they started out higher and got lower. They really have done a better job of this on a whole as we have. So we're looking at setting targets. The targets we're looking at right now are essentially to get us on track with our Paris goals by 2025, to get us on track with our comprehensive energy plan goals over time. And then by the time we reach those goals in 2050, which I think are about an 85% reduction from our 1990 levels, we're also looking at what a net zero framework might look like on top of those reductions. So that's the Global Warming Solutions Act. I cannot pretend to be a cap and invest expert, although I'm really learning. I'm excited to go to the Transportation Climate Initiative session this afternoon. But this is something actually that the executive branch has taken a leadership role in. So I think it's now up to like 11 states in the District of Columbia are participating in something called the Transportation Climate Initiative. And this is a cap and invest program to create a regional cap on transportation emissions for New England and Mid-Atlantic states. That's based a lot on RGGI and other programs like the Western Climate Initiative. And then the proceeds of this could be used to invest in clean transportation alternatives, whether that's through consumer incentives, whether that's through building out pedestrian and bike infrastructure, whether that's accelerating and expanding our public transportation access. Those are the kind of investments we can make. What we are seeing our role in is in the legislature, potentially, and for the Climate Caucus is threefold. So first of all, the governor's office has committed us to investigating and developing the model, and a draft framework did come out this fall. And again, you can hear a lot more about that this afternoon if you're interested. We haven't committed to actually joining the Transportation Climate Initiative, and we feel that that's really imperative. We also feel that it's really imperative. So in the draft framework that came out, it said that jurisdictions or states could take the proceeds that came to them and invest those in basically whatever they wanted as they see fit. We feel like it's really important that those funds are directed to exactly the kinds of examples I just talked about, to clean transportation alternatives. We don't want this going to build new highways, to maintain highways. We want this to put us on the path. Because a good cap and invest program is not a permanent program, right? The goal is to continue to reduce emissions and make the program ultimately obsolete. The other thing we're interested in looking at is, can we leverage our expected revenues from participation in this program to possibly do some bonding, some borrowing that sets us up really well and accelerates our opportunity to make some of these kinds of investments. We have another bill where we're looking at workforce development, particularly in building efficiency, but really across trades. So we have all of these professions that interact with Vermonters around issues of efficiency, particularly in the building trades, right? So we want to make sure that frontline workers in those industries know what Vermont's goals are educated in how to tell consumers their options for creating more efficient homes, for driving more efficient cars, and that they actually tell Vermonters about those goals, about some of the incentive programs that might be available to them. Some of these professionals are licensed, so things like plumbers, HVAC contractors, electricians, realtors, home inspectors. And so we're looking at how these things intersect with our licensing regulations and whether there might be some opportunities to strengthen those. And then there are other folks who aren't licensed, like car dealers, right? Who we know that there are efficient electric vehicles, but they're not necessarily front and center on the lot. We don't necessarily have dealers prepared to tell Vermonters about how to access incentives. So we want to work on all of those things, and then also continue to be looking at our building codes and how they're enforced and how we can strengthen them and also strengthen enforcement. Finally, and I won't say as much about this because Senator Perchlik just talked about this, but we're looking at how we strengthen both our renewable requirements, our in-state requirements, particularly in electrification. We're looking at just regulatory barriers in general to renewables, things like, especially around things like solar installation. And then finally, the legislature set us on a path last session to look at the role of Efficiency Vermont and whether we could expand the role that they play beyond just electric efficiency, beyond home efficiencies, but can Efficiency Vermont help Vermonters access transportation alternatives and things like that. So we're looking at their role, and I believe a bill will be coming forward in the Senate around that issue. And that's really our platform. You can tell by this slide, I hope that we feel a sense of urgency about it. That's where we're at in the legislature. We're wanting to collaborate with all of you, with our many, many allies, and we have been for some time, and Lauren's been an amazing partner. I told you about the legislature. These are some questions that I think it's really worth asking about the executive branch and what they're doing. If you have a chance to ask them how they're going to partner with us in this. So what does it mean that the governor committed us to meeting those Paris climate goals, and how do we get there? The governor had a climate action commission with 21 members. Joey Miller served on it. They put forward 50 recommendations. Which of these could be moved forward in the coming year? Because not many have been moved forward so far. And then what in the budget, when we come back in January, one of the first things that we get is a proposed budget and budget address from the executive branch. What in the budget is going to help us address the climate crisis this year? It'd be great to have a budget for the climate caucus too, but there's probably campaign and finance laws around that. So we hope you're on board. We really want to partner with all of you, as many Vermonters as we can in this. And I'll just close by recognizing we think this is a meaningful and actionable agenda that sets us on a path to get back on track with our goals, to make significant reductions in those two highest emissions sectors, transportation and heating. But we also recognize the huge sense of urgency that people feel. When we are going around the state and talking about this, we are hearing from people who are saying, yes, but this is not enough. This is not enough. And I just really want to acknowledge that, especially after being at one of these events in Burlington last week, where an 8th grader got up and said, I am terrified for my future. I am terrified about my ability to have and raise children. Do you really think this is enough? And the answer is it's not. So please, my ask to you today is, please help us do this and a lot more. And thank you again so much for your work.